Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Barry Kostrinsky. These are artist talks. We do this every Tuesday. Tonight, we have Isolde Kille, who's going to give a presentation on her work. We also have Maureen Nolan, who will be modeling sort of on a small screen, because Isolde will share screen so we can see her work better. I will say you're in for a treat tonight. Isolde is not only a great visual artist, but quite an intellectual thinker about art. And one thing that strikes me, Isolde, is when you talk, you don't race. And I think it's important that thoughts are like given the weight of time they deserve. And so we absorb them. Earlier I was watching some political comedy, and I don't watch a lot of that stuff, and I sort of get a sense of what's going on. And I found it very offensive how quickly they spoke, the sort of forced laughs. And I think part of the art world, it's not escapism, but it's like a venture into a more holistic world in a way. And so I think we're in for a treat, not only with the material you present, but the way you present it and the way you speak about your art, and also art in general. So I won't say much more, except we do this every Tuesday night. It goes 6 to 7. Next week, Lily White will be presenting. And if you look at my website, you can see several other artists are lined up, probably for the next 4 or 5 talks. Always one artist, about a 30-minute presentation. And as always, everybody feel free to jump in at any time with any question. And as well, Mo is there doing sort of short poses. Hard to say 5-minute, 10-minute. You know how it is. Right when you're into the drawing, the model moves, and that's sort of part of the fun of it. So that's Mo there. So Isolde, thank you for your time, and thanks for sharing with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. I just wanted to also mention that I met Barry around 2006, maybe. And at that time, I was showing with L'Étal Maire in Chelsea, New York. And it just happened to be the moment of economic crisis. And so there was a moment for me where I was thinking, maybe I stay in New York and become like this social butterfly and try to promote my work. But since I'm an artist who really enjoys making the artworks, I decided to move to New Mexico. And that was with Barry, actually, the last exhibitions. I was already in a residency. And I was making mirror sculpture. I was literally breaking the mirrors, and I wanted to just go beyond the perception of what we usually are. And I showed the mirror works with Barry, and then I disappeared into the desert. And just recently, Barry contacted me again. And so I think this is like a pivotal moment for me, because I somewhere have been very experimental in the desert.
I just want to put a disclaimer in. Not every woman that I meet and shows with me then disappears into the desert.
I thought it was a really interesting way of connecting before. And then right now, I feel I've been creating on the land in rural New Mexico. And also recently, I just returned from Joshua Tree, California. And I just gonna share like some of the recent works I've done in Joshua Tree. I don't know if you can see this.
Yes, we can. We can.
Okay. So this is a painting, and I usually work on the ground directly on the sand and over periods of time, and spill paints And I started to incorporate more of the earth elements. So the earth and the time and the paint creates then a landscape. And there are also sculptures always in my work.
So there is a question. Can you explain what Joshua Tree is? What goes on around there? What makes it unique, and what drew you to Joshua Tree?
Joshua Tree is another desert, and in New Mexico we're almost at 8,000 feet. In Joshua Tree you're more like at 2,000, 3,000 feet. And I wanted to experience a different desert, and at the same time also I had an opportunity to connect to some other artists there. It's a vibrant art scene in Joshua Tree. And I had an opportunity at like a new art space to work on the land before it actually got built up into like a new art space. And I just spent there 8 months and immersed in the elements, connected to some local artists, which was really inspiring, and worked with objects which are also found there on that site. So those sculptures were left behind in this artist space. And I pretty much just rolled them into the dirt with paint. I use often paint also as a glue, and created those, I call them like cupcakes or just things. And so here you see a moment of how I work. That is from Joshua Tree. Those are like the sculptures. I place them on the canvas. So the canvas is sometimes also a protection for some other works. And I work in multiple layers over periods of time. And it is also my inner reality, which then will be transformed and connects to the landscape I am in. So in that way, each work is almost a time capsule of my interaction with that environment. And it creates like multiple outcomes in sculpture and paintings.
You know, I have to say, Isolde, when I first saw these on your website, I right away thought of the contemporary trend in ceramics. Brian Roquefort is an artist that makes ceramics that have this sort of thickness to the glaze. And I believe Ken Price is the other one who's much more well known. And so I know you're not using clay, but it's interesting that you're hitting a form that is current in contemporary ceramics. And I'll put the names in the chat for you to see, and we can always chat later. I think you'll find it inspiring.
Yes, aware of it when I started this process, but when I finished the works, I realized that they look like ceramic pieces. It's maybe also the crust of time, and just that the sand was incorporated, that this is actually then relating to firing almost. And maybe also what was so spectacular during the first 7 months, I didn't see any rain in Joshua Tree. And it was like eternal sunshine. And so they really bake outside of the sun. And that's maybe why they also look like ceramics. And during this period, I also had like an exhibition in New York. And because I didn't see any rain, I started to play with water. and worked with the reflection of water in the sun. And those small video clips, they are often very abstracted in the environment, and also sometimes used for like installing the works. So you see in the first image, the installation shot of the video projection of this water video. And in the second, you see the water reflection with me performing in the space. And since I work with canvas on the floor, sometimes those canvases also take different shapes, and I install them sometimes not as like paintings. I sometimes make like textile installations with them. And I created over the time costumes with them. And I have masks, and I created mirror sticks, which I call magic sticks. And I walk through those installations as a performance. So I work on all those levels, painting, video, sculpture, installation, performance. And I have always just, those are like rheograms or synograms. So I worked with the sun exposure, and I have a series of papers always with me. They are also similar to like small sketches to larger works. And this is like a small portfolio, so I stop sharing this right now to just give a general introduction. So maybe there are like some questions right now also.
I did notice the similarity when you work with light like that and catch it sort of dancing. It's not unlike Man Ray's early videos that he did when photographers and artists first, I think it's about 1920 when they first worked with cinematography. They did quite aesthetic short films and just watch light play and dance on a screen. So I think it's similar to what you're doing.
Yes, that's the intent. I want to have like in my final installation a sensibility of wonder, so that you ask, where are you? What do you see? And you connect on different experiences. And I can share right now like a short wheel of like videos to bring this into movement. And okay. So this is the video of a detailed shot of like a painting, so several series of paintings. And there is always a macro sensibility of connecting to elements as like a form of our landscapes. Those are actually photographic prints. And I worked with water and emulsions to deteriorate the process. and then rotated them so that there is like it's almost like a little microcosm of worlds. And let me find more things to share. I was actually in the middle of some other things, so there is so this is a production video of my processes. And it's a really short one. Most of my video clips are very short. I filmed them almost in one breath. They're connected to haiku poems. So instead of like showing, I'm telling a little bit of a story. So I'm working on a larger film where I connect my personal stories with my environment and my art production, so that the inner form creates the outer form and it becomes a narrative. And this is like a small video clip, which also always shows that I like to counteract. I like to counteract certain tendencies in the arts. So here we go. So out of those broken mirrors, I often create mirror sculptures.
Am I right to say a piece like that is sort of like a happening?
Yes, yeah, that's a happening. And it comes out of the artistic process. I don't film everything, but there are like certain moments where I think like, how can I film this radical action to create art? And how can I enhance that? And this is part of my joy too, to not have like the product, just also have like the creation as part of the work. And I always say, art is not a product, art is an event in time. And the desert really freed myself to just explore and work more with the elements.
I like how you expressed earlier that you don't want to lay everything out, because as I'm drawing, sometimes when you draw, it's very good to, put some lines down, but you don't put everything down. And so you get an interesting form by hitting a few right lines. And I once had an artist tell me a long time ago, you don't have to connect the lines, so to speak. And there's some beauty that it somehow makes the work more dynamic when you can do that in a work of art. It leaves it up to the viewer to some extent, but also it doesn't localize it. Rembrandt localizes it. It's a finished object, and Leonardo too, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's something very active and something beautiful in in sort of doing some prescient lines that don't tell the whole story. And I think that's what you're after as well. And I will say, when I do a work of art and then later I try and write about it, I think I'm like ready to say, don't worry, whatever I say now is a lie. Because I go through a process when I paint, and a lot of things happen and I don't remember them. And then sort of you remember the last few thoughts. And then when you try and explain the work, you're doing that and you're doing the thinking. But a lot of times a painting can evolve very quickly, and a lot of different things are going on. They get layered and you forget the layer. So I think it's interesting that a work of art and the process is a lot richer than what the best writer can say about it, or what the artist can say about it too. Because, you know, it's I do think of it as an act.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm gonna share a little bit something else. So I describe that as an alternate reality. So here are large canvases where I spilled paint over periods of time. Sometimes I overlay them, and the paint bleeds through the canvases and influences the other piece. And that way, I call them the recordings of color. And it's really my inner expressions. And I, like those canvases, for example, have been created over a period of a year in New Mexico. They have seen snow, they have seen rain, they have seen all the elements. And here they're installed. And this is one view. And over the time of like recording the colors, I build up constellations. And that actually really goes back to the work which I've done in New York, because it was black and white, and I was actually splashing paint black and white, alternating and creating landscapes in space. And in New Mexico and Joshua Tree, I work with color, and with color to create like a sensibility of space is actually a different process. It has multiple layers. And so here you see that they sometimes take on the earth itself. I work with multiple materials. Usually I start with ink, go then into oil, sometimes glitter, and sometimes I even burn the canvases, and out of the burned canvases I actually construct new pieces. And all those processes are usually documented. And since I always want to have like a sensibility of like a figure in those installations of like large canvases, I have those globes. In Joshua Tree, they became more like ceramic pieces. In New Mexico, because it has a different tranquility, those deserts. If I would like describe working in New Mexico, it's like almost at 8,000 feet. It's very surreal in itself. The air is thin and you reflect a lot. And so I work a lot on mirror sculptures. Those are the balls that they're representing the fragmented self. And so if the viewer sees them in the installation, they reflect the environment, they reflect the viewer. And they are also often, I hang them above the canvases. So if I pour things on those mirror balls, it drips to the canvas. So they're actually really kind of interacting with each other in the production too. So you see they're actually quite layered. They have pigments and sand, and my favorite store is Hobby Lobby. And here are the shamanic tools where this is a work which I started in Taos in New Mexico. And I literally worked on those magic sticks for over 3 years. And I carried them with me. I carried them to Taos, I carried them to New Mexico, Sante Fe, different location in Sante Fe. I brought them to Joshua tree, and I kept weaving around those actually original plastic tubes and layering them more and more, collecting like shelves, collecting bells, and I finished them just recently. And you see the details.
Isolde, when you say shamanic tools, are you trying to use these in a ritual? Are you trying to imbue these with a spirit?
Yes, I actually use them for the performance pieces, as you can see here. And since there is a different sensibility in each place, and I work with the environment and look for situations where I can work outside and create a body of work, I first of all liberated myself of like studio costs, but also to really go into an environment. I work with performances to enter it. Those performances are sometimes private, and sometimes they're also performed during the installations which I create in the exhibitions. And the magic sticks are having bells, so they're making sounds, and it's a little bit of clearing the energies and entering the space with a different consciousness, so that I don't see myself necessarily as an artist to make works. I see myself more as a time traveler entering the space and performing and getting in contacts with the spirits. That happens when you spend too much time in Sante Fe. You get in contact with the spirits at 8,000 feet. You don't really actually think about any longer, you just do. And the work itself dictates itself, the weather dictates what you're doing. And so it becomes more like an interactive process. So it became also more interactive for me to enter this space as a performer.
Isolde, are you familiar with Hilma F. Klint?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so that's the artist that sort of exploded on the screen through the Guggenheim exhibit that she had. Of course, when she was alive, she asked that her work not be seen for, I think, 50 years, something like that, if not more. But she's certainly interested in, bringing the spiritual in and almost giving a pathway to the spiritual world.
Yes, and that also describes a little bit my approach. When I was in New York City, I had the spatial black and white paintings, and I deconstructed advertisement. And there was literally a moment in New York City where I thought the female identity, which is presented in the images of advertisements, I needed to really disassociate with it and look into my inner body as a female. And that's my message also in my art, to connect to this female persona. And I personally just also like to disguise myself. So I created over the years customs and masks. And this mask actually with the mirrors is actually from 2016. And I also carried it to different places. I did a performance, for example, at the High Line I think in 2016. This is where the mask was created for. And I performed also at Times Square. And but it's still active. It's still kind of being in use. And the custom right next to it is part of like 5 other customs which I have, and so I choose them to for the location, and I have like my outfits and walk the land first and get in contact with this. see how it feels. And if you're in a custom or wear a mask, everything from your body becomes more heavy. It becomes actually like you can't really see how you put your foot in front of yourself. You can't actually just see the whole, you just see only that moment of like those like little things. And it gives you a sensibility where I can enter the space and then actually create.
Isolde, I like the costume very much on the left. It makes me think a little bit in terms of coloration of what Michael Krasowitz's colors. Obviously, his forms are totally different. I think there was a lot to be said for, making an object that is, functional in society as clothing. There is, when we think as artists, how do we sell product? An object like that is quite beautiful. It certainly stands apart from anything commercial. And yet at the same time, I could see that, it might be an interesting thing to somehow have artists approach a fashion show and bring a bunch of artists who, are doing interesting things and sort of just as a group show these works. And of course, not just show them as fashion models moving down a walkway, but as you perform your ritual in it, or as Michael might have his wife Wendy do a dance that's appropriate around it, and sort of try and break into fashion.
Yeah, I think that actually has been going on. I think Sterling Ruby actually created like a fashion line, and but there also have been like artists before which actually have done it. I at this moment actually use my customs. I don't even like put them on the market. There is like it was really an intuitive process of like, I didn't even plan to make the customs. I had those pieces of like canvases and they were like nice and I didn't know what to do with it. And I just started to kind of hang them over me and they started to take on shape. And this is how it developed. And at the moment, I just use them to perform and don't even worry about if I want to sell it.
I respect that. I'm
Yeah.
just saying they're quite beautiful.
Yes, I like this costume a lot too, actually. I sometimes think, oh, maybe I can go to an opening with this, maybe this is my outfit for my opening. Then I don't have to worry what I'm gonna wear. So, and here is like I think a video of performance. And I don't know, can you hear the sound?
Not yet.
All right, this is like the advanced, which I didn't do. But this is another costume. I sometimes channel the idea and I was just thinking, I'm from the element of the river. I'm coming from the river nation.
I don't think we're seeing it, Isolde.
Oh, you don't see it?
No, we're still on the last image.
Ah, okay. All right. So, well, let's go with the portfolio continuously.
Yes, good idea.
And then I continue with the all right, so here are the costumes. This video you've seen, this is like actually the video of the production process. Those are the documentations of environment. And this is sometimes how it actually plays out when projection, canvas, and performance comes together. So I encourage sometimes also other artists to participate. So it's a collaborative process. Okay.
You know, to the earlier point, Isolde, when you mentioned that you leave your canvases outside and let them get exposed to the elements, Julian Schnabel, at least a part of his studio, I'm pretty sure the one in the Hamptons, he left work outside for years, I believe it was, and let the elements, I'm going back, this could be 10 or 12 years ago, and he let the elements sort of affect them. And when you do that, you get like an imprint of time.
Yes.
You get aware, you get certain things, and I've mentioned this before. Time is a critical thing, a critical theme in the art world, probably always. And whenever your piece can speak to time, because let's face it, in a two-dimensional work, you're working in sort of silence often, and it's a still image. And whenever you can get a still image to speak with the depth of time, it says a lot. It's quite moving.
Yeah, thanks. It's it really, I can't actually imagine any longer to create in the studio, because I like the destruction of nature so much, and I like to also incorporate more of the earth, and it's just pushes it to a different realm, because in a way I come from this image making from the 80s, so it was like inspired by Christopher Wool, and just the notion, I think Germany, you had like after the Second World War, boys, you can't paint any longer after Auschwitz, what subject matter you can choose. And so there's still a desire to paint, but the object in itself, I brought it back to working with nature and interacting with this, and that creates then my form. And I don't see myself any longer as this individual artist who says like, oh, my brush stroke, or like, oh, my act. It's more like I just do what nature dictates me, and it's a completely different approach. I just there's maybe something when Richter said like I paint when I forget that I'm painting. This is kind of the state where I want to be in. I don't really want to think what I do. I just want to be immersed into those elements, and then things happen. Sometimes things speak to you after a while, and that's what I'm seeking for. I'm seeking for like this dialogue, to connecting the internal, and then I work on those multiple levels to record it and to install it in space, and hopefully also install it in nature. And everything is somewhere temporary. Sometimes also works where I thought they were finished, and I pick them up and I just keep on working on them, and they're evolving. And so there is a constant process.
Isolde, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, at the beginning of that long sentence, or that talk just a minute ago, you said you like did you say distraction or destruction of nature when you're working outside? I didn't understand the word that you used, whether it was distraction or destruction. At the very beginning, when you started talking about your process outside.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I said distraction, but I like
distraction. Okay.
But I like to work destructive.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that's what I came to the moment. I think I painted for the longest. I can't actually. I always painted already as a child, and it's somewhere frustrating if you think sometimes in your studio, oh, this work looks like Sigmar Polke, this work looks like this, and so you're in a constant destructions of destroying fathers, especially if you come from the German history. And so
Somebody has some background, maybe mute yourself. Somebody has some background sound.
Yeah, it's not me.
I know, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I didn't know. I just wanted to say it's really not me, but I was having a hard time hearing her talk. Yeah.
It's sold, I thought the same thing. I thought you said destruction. And, it made me think, you're using the elements, you're letting the piece deteriorate. And I think of entropy. I think of the second law of thermodynamics. And again, destruction speaks to time. When you said you want to get behind thinking, I think what you're saying is you want to get away from frontal lobe thinking, sort of analytical thought, and you want to access your sort of reptilian brain, the more intuitive, more responsive. And when you do that, you've got to be nimble to let go of thinking, which is very hard to do. That's everything we see, stop signs, the news, it's all frontal lobe. I mean, and so I think as artists, we often do try and let go of that. And if you can, you tap into something that's a little more primordial, a little more intuitive if you can let go. It's similar to drawing. If you can let the line go, you can get something that's very different. So I sort of respect what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah, I also sometimes often think about the 1920s when the surrealism came in, and we are like in a very similar time. So I call it a little bit the subconscious mind. Some people also say there is a knowing, there's the inner knowing. So I want to connect to that inner knowing. And it's a little bit also a quest of how we can live in nature, and what does it teach us to create an antidote to the climate crisis we are in right now. This is pretty much at the heart of it too. That's also why I left New York. I thought, like, if I want to be an artist and make a difference, I need to actually also have a different way of producing. And it took me a while to really actually develop this. Now that's why I said it's interesting that Barry connects, because he connected to me at the beginning of the journey, and now I feel a little bit more at the end of the journey. And I'm really busy actually writing about it, proposing it to get it back into the city, because that's the other part of the artist. We need to show it, and we need to actually make it visible to the public. So it has been a process of like 12 years, and now I'm coming out of this, and I will continue to work on that. But I also need to move from the mountain back into the public.
Let me ask you, it's maybe a bit of an unfair question. Where do you hope to be in 10 years? In terms of your art, obviously.
At Hauser and Weird, or something even better. Or, I mean, they're like, I always was very ambitious as an artist. So I do want to make sure that the works are in collections and going to be preserved.
I had an artist who's usually with us, Wendy Liss. She's not tonight. And she said sort of casually, like, about her art, like, she's not interested in, getting into great museums. I mean, is that the way you think? And I'm like, that's correct. That's the way I think. And I sort of always assume that's what all artists think like that. Yes, we want to get into Hauser and Wirth. We want to get into Gagosian. Our competition is Rembrandt. That's our competition. Or Polke. I saw Polk's exhibit at MoMA. I don't know if it was 10 or 12 years ago. And, I had respect for him when I learned about him in college, how he just mailed up this folded up this gigantic drawing and mailed it into MoMA. It was probably in 1980. And right away, I loved the guy. But when I saw that exhibit at MoMA, and I went a couple of times, and every room was brilliant in a different way. And it really hit me. You made another point, being German, having to live with the legacy of the Nazis is a big burden. And, it makes me think like, we all create art, and it's a terrible thing to say, but what if there's like a nuclear explosion somewhere, a small, dirty nuclear explosion? Does that change the art world? And I would say yes. It's sort of, I don't think there are any more flower paintings when that happens. And it's a tough question, but it's trying to force us into a depth that art can penetrate. And so often it's inspired by the tragedies humans create. And,
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because my work somewhere touches on impermanence, and there is somewhere like also this really amazing transition happening, because we are moving into the digital realm, and I address both the analog and the digital. And there's a part of me which always thought, what does it really mean to actually preserve works in the 21st century? Can we actually continue filling all those like museums, and or do we need like to have a certain amount of digital reference to be actually broadcast in space? And so lately I've been working on my personal story of like integrating that with the video and the works, and this
relation. The governor Brian Kemp testified.
Hi, Elaine's iPad. You're on the speakerphone.
that's Anne Elaine's iPad. She's a very close family friend of Kathy, my wife, and close friend of mine, I'd like to say.
Yeah.
We found
Yeah,
it.
so I always thought about those things, because I think there was an awareness right away that the art market, which we had known it in the 80s, might gonna evolve into something different, and we're seeing it right now. We have like more podcasts about like more discussions about more personal sharings and experiential experiences, and we're definitely transitioning into a different realm. And so there is a part of me which of course wants to have works preserved, but there's also a part of me which wants to make a difference in how work is being presented and being preserved. I mean, I have like, at the moment, I have like overwhelming amount of works, and I thought actually to, instead of like putting it all in storage, I thought actually of some of the works to bury them into the land. So I'm working actually on a project right now where I actually will bury my work into the land to give it back to nature, to give it back to that thing, but then also this process of burial over a period of time. So yeah, there are like figures like Kiefer or Sigmund Polke, which actually have been very influential in my upbringing.
I know if you bury your works, Isolde, you will video the burying of the works.
Yes.
And then you'll have another piece. There's sort of another iteration.
Yes, so that actually kind of speaks about the apocalypse, you know, of like the different stages of work, of like this was completed in 2004, then it got buried in whatever, like 2022, and then it got like lifted up in like whatever 2024, and this is actually just a continuum. and working with the elements that has in general the message of impermanence. I mean, there is nothing permanent really there. And so I work with this impermanence.
Isolde, are you influenced by Taoism at all, or Zen Buddhism?
Yeah, that's how I managed to transit. I went first into a Zen monastery, and I spent like 30 months actually studying Buddhism and meditating. I also studied next to fine arts. I studied also philosophy, so I was always interested in metaphysics. And I'm training as a hypnotherapist right now, so I'm going into the subconscious journey of myself. And so the subconscious, the hypnotherapy, the meditation, and the work influence each other.
Mhm.
So in that way, actually, I'm soul searching.
Very nice. Can I open it up to questions, anybody, or thoughts? You know how we do it here. Isolde, shall I assume you're finished sharing?
Yes. Mhm.
We like to clap for everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Isolde?
Yes.
Oh, it's Rita again. I just wanted to say, I'm so glad. I think I saw this on Instagram, your post, and I'm in Sante Fe too. I think Rita Barr.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So this is the first time I've actually heard you speak, and it was very enjoyable. I really liked it, and thank you, Barry, for hosting it. It was a pleasure, and it's the first time. Like I said, we've heard each other besides just Instagram things, so we'll have to connect sometime here in town.
We have to connect. And you know what? When I saw this name, I knew it was you.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope that's a good thing. Yeah, I really enjoyed it because I wanted to hear more from you and your language, how what you talk about in your work. And so it was great. It was a real pleasure. So
Well,
thank you. And I have to go. So I just wanted to say hi and
yes,
we'll
yeah.
connect in town.
We connect in town, exactly.
Okay, wonderful. Bye-bye. Thank you all very
Bye.
much.
Thank you. Thank you
I
for
really
joining.
enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You know, my takeaway from what Rita said, she said the word connect over and over again. And I can't emphasize that. You know, I've always thought of the duality of, do you do the Walden thing and do you go in the woods all alone and create? Or are we social beings? And I think we are social beings and we need connections. That's how we're at our best. That's how we become alive, so to speak. Yes, through meditation, you can quiet down and connect, you know, with the ethereal and with everything. However, when we're together in a group and we're listening and speaking, I mean, I can only speak my thoughts, but when I hear you speak, it's new information and data. It's also new, it's new feelings. It sort of expands me. And I think one of the largest concepts is connectedness. And if you just got to look at social media, the reason that has gone so ballistic in the last 10 or 12 years is it's connecting people. Now, you could say there's a lot of bad connections. There's a lot of, you know, I'll use the word persona in a negative way, false personas that people put up. But at the heart, we like to have things liked, and we like connections with other people. We are social beings. We always seem to form tribes. Now, as artists, we often go into our studios by ourselves. There has been a rise in collectives. The Biennale in Venice, I think, was exploring all different collectives. And so there's no question about it. That's something else. But I think as artists, we mostly are on our own, but we want to connect with the viewer. We want to connect with other artists. And I just think it's an important principle. I always use the idea of a beehive is like what we are. I mean, we're not hexagons on these rectangular screens. but we are connecting like bees and sort of working together, giving each other ideas and sharing. Sharing is important. It could be, I imagine Thoreau was quite lonely. I mean, he did make friends with the rocks on walks. You do get very close to nature, and that's a beautiful thing. But I think we really need connectedness.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, I'm definitely also somebody who needs connection, and it's necessary right now too. That's why I said you connected in the beginning and then now at the end of the journey, because I want to connect right now. And it's such a different experience to have when I entered first New Mexico from New York. I mean, it was just it was difficult, because everything was like slowed down, like to a moment. It has a way here. You just want to get a coffee, and you want to go to the cash register, and you're in the speed and all those kind of things, and then it's like a person that slowing you down, and it happens on a regular basis, until you actually really slow down so much that you actually sometimes think, well, I have to get back into the city. I have to speed up right now. I have to just get back into that mingle. So I love both of the worlds. I mean, that's my wish at this moment. I would like to connect both of those worlds, like the urban and the nature. I had to figure it out separately, but there is in Sante Fe, I mean, Rita I've known for, I think, online for the last 5 years. We always wanted to connect. We haven't connected. That is Sante Fe. You actually live in your beautiful environment, and you don't actually like have this place of meeting so often. So it can happen that you can live here for like 10 years and you haven't met certain people because it just hasn't happened. In New York, it's different. I mean, in New York, you walk down the street and kind of internet connects, and they're suggesting and stuff like this, a completely different energy. So
And obviously with COVID, a lot of artists got disconnected. A lot of shows were canceled. There weren't openings to go to for about 2 years. That's come back, and I think it is an important part. And artists in New York, yes, you know, if you're a regular at Chelsea on a Thursday, or you go to, you know, many of the openings, or you go to the fairs, you will connect and you will see similar people that you see at other fairs. As large as an art world as it is a small art world.
yes, yes. And New York is still the center.
Yeah. I want to thank you, Isolde, and thank everybody else for their time. Of course, Maureen Nolan Kelly for modeling for us. If anybody would like to contribute to her, you can reach out to me, and I can always forward her information for her Venmo account. But thank you, Mo, for coming. Lily White will be speaking next week. Have to say hi to my friend David. Clap, clap, clap for you, David. So nice to see you. Nice to reconnect with you. Thank you, everybody. I'll have this up on the YouTube channel probably in a few days. And any questions at all, just reach out. Thanks for coming by, Elaine, too. And Elaine.
Yeah.
Thanks,
And
Isolde. That was
thank you
lovely.
all too for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Isolde. Great job.
Thanks.